I never imagined my life would cross paths with people like them, the kind who lived in houses big enough to swallow my whole neighborhood, where the floors gleamed like mirrors and the air smelled of jasmine and money. My name is Ruth, and for most of my life, I've been invisible. The maid who came in early, left late, and never spoke unless spoken to. That's what my mother taught me. Don't talk, Ruth. People like them don't want to hear people like us. And so, I didn't. When I got the job at Mr. and Mrs. Carrington's mansion, it felt like a miracle. My husband, Eddie, had lost his construction work months before, and bills were piling up like a storm cloud over our marriage. The Carringtons paid well, and though I scrubbed marble floors until my back screamed, I thanked God every day for that job. Mr. Carrington, Ethan, was not like most rich men I'd seen. He was quiet, almost too quiet. There was a sadness in his eyes, the kind you couldn't clean away with polish or perfume. His wife, Madeline, was beautiful, poised, the kind of woman who could command a room with a whisper. Yet, I often sensed an icy distance between them. Still, I kept my head down and worked. That's what maids do. The secret, I shouldn't have heard it, happened one rainy Thursday night. The Carringtons were out for a charity gala, and I stayed late to finish the laundry. Eddie came to pick me up, something he never did. He said the truck was acting strange and didn't want me walking in the rain, but something about his smile didn't sit right. It was forced, sharp at the edges. "Wait for me in the kitchen," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'll be done in 10. As I folded the last of Mr. Carrington's shirts, I heard voices, faint, muffled, coming from the hall, Eddie's voice, and another one. At first, I thought it was one of the security guards, but when I stepped closer, hiding behind the staircase, my blood ran cold. Eddie was whispering to a man in a suit, someone I didn't recognize. Their faces were close, their tones urgent. "She trusts you, right?" the man said. "You get her in the system, we'll handle the rest. Carrington's files, the bank access, all of it." "Easy money," Eddie nodded. "She's just the maid, she won't suspect a thing." I froze. They were talking about me. I wanted to scream, to confront him, but my voice locked in my throat. Then I heard the words that nearly made me collapse. "After tomorrow, he'll lose everything." Mr. Carrington. Eddie was planning to ruin the man who had done nothing but treat me with quiet respect, who once gave me an envelope of cash when he overheard me crying about my son's hospital bill. And now my husband, the man I'd trusted with every piece of me, was going to destroy him. "Don't talk." That night, I didn't sleep. When Eddie asked why I was quiet, I just said I was tired. Inside, my heart was ripping apart. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't heard, to stay out of it, to keep my mouth shut and my head down like always. "Don't talk, Ruth." But something deeper, something fierce, wouldn't let me stay silent. I couldn't let an innocent man lose everything because of my husband's greed. By dawn, I'd made my decision. The risky arrived early the next morning, trembling. Mr. Carrington was already in his office, looking over some papers. "Good morning, Ruth," he said softly, without looking up. I opened my mouth, then froze. "How do you tell your billionaire boss that your husband is plotting against him? That your own family might be the enemy?" My mother's words echoed again, "Don't talk." But this time I did. "Sir," I whispered, "I think someone is trying to hurt you." He finally looked up, surprised, but not angry. "What do you mean?" I told him everything, every word I'd overheard, every detail I could remember. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the cup of coffee I was holding. When I finished, he didn't speak for a long time. His jaw tightened, but his eyes were kind. "Ruth," he said quietly, "you did the right thing." Then, he picked up his phone, called someone named Harris, and within minutes the quiet mansion turned into a fortress. The sting. The next 2 days were a blur of police, investigators, and questions. It turned out the man in the suit was a disgraced former employee, a tech consultant Mr. Carrington had fired months ago for stealing data. He'd been planning revenge ever since, and Eddie was his inside man. They had planted spyware in the Carrington servers, planning to drain millions from hidden accounts. But because I spoke up, they caught him. Eddie was arrested that afternoon. When they let him out in handcuffs, his eyes met mine, full of betrayal and rage. "How could you?" he hissed. I wanted to scream that he was the one who betrayed me, but all that came out was a whisper. I had to. The silence that broke. Everything days turned into weeks. My heart felt like shattered glass. I'd lost my husband, my home, everything I thought my life was built on. But I still showed up for work. I couldn't bear to hide in shame. Mr. Carrington never treated me differently. If anything, he grew quieter, more thoughtful. One evening, he called me into his office. "I owe you my life," he said. "You saved everything. My company, my family. I can't imagine the cost that came with that." I tried to smile. "I just did what was right, sir." He stood and walked to the window. The sunset poured gold across the glass, painting the room in warmth. "You know," he said slowly, "my father used to tell me that the most powerful people in the world are the ones no one notices, the ones who quietly keep everything from falling apart." Then he turned to me. "You were that person, Ruth." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time in years, someone had seen me, not as a maid, not as a poor woman, just me, a new beginning. A few months later, I received a letter, embossed with the Carrington logo. Inside was a check that made my knees buckle. It was enough to start over and to rebuild the life Eddie had broken. But more than that, there was a note. "Ruth, you taught me that loyalty doesn't come from contracts or wealth. It comes from courage. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. Ethan." I cried for a long time that night, not because of the money, but because someone finally believed that a maid's voice mattered. Epilogue. 2 years later, I run a small cleaning service of my own, Ruth's Helping Hands. I hire women like me, quiet, hard-working, invisible no more. Sometimes, when I see their tired faces light up after payday, I remember that night, the rain, the whispers, the fear, and the moment I finally chose to talk. They used to say silence is golden. For me, it was survival. I grew up in a neighborhood where being quiet kept you safe. My mama used to say, "Ruth, the walls have ears, and people like us can't afford to be heard." So I learned to clean without sound, to move like air, to see everything but say nothing. That habit followed me into adulthood. It got me jobs, it kept me out of trouble. It also kept me unseen. When I started working for the Carringtons, the wealthiest family in the city, I promised myself the same rule. Don't talk, just work. But life has a way of testing the promises you make to yourself, especially when silence becomes the very thing that could destroy someone else. Part 2. Behind the glass walls, the Carrington mansion stood at the edge of Lakeview Heights, a palace of glass and marble. The first day I walked in, I felt like an imposter stepping into a dream. Everything glowed. The chandeliers, the polished floors, even the people. Mrs. Madeline Carrington, always graceful, moved through the house like she was born out of sunlight. Mr. Carrington, Ethan, was quieter, harder to read. He carried a kind of loneliness in his eyes, the kind that money couldn't erase. He wasn't cruel, though. He said thank you when I brought his coffee. He remembered my name. When my hands were blistered from scrubbing floors, he left a small bottle of lotion on the counter with a note that said, "Please take care of yourself too." It was such a small act. But when you've spent your life invisible, kindness feels like sunlight on skin that's never seen the day. I didn't realize then how that kindness would one day save him and destroy everything I knew. Part 3. The man I thought I knew. My husband, Eddie, wasn't always a bad man. When we first met, he used to call me his angel. We dreamed of buying a small home, maybe even having a baby one day. But dreams don't feed you. And when Eddie lost his job at the construction site, something changed. He started drinking, started keeping secrets. His eyes grew darker, his laughter turned bitter. I tried to help, but poverty eats love like rust eats steel. So when I got the Carrington job, I thought it would fix things. I thought he'd be proud. Instead, he looked at me like I'd betrayed him. You're working for people who wouldn't even look at you if you weren't cleaning their dirt. He spat one night. They've been kind to me, I said softly. He laughed, that cruel kind of laugh that cuts through your chest. They're kind because you're useful. Don't forget that. I never answered, because that's what I did best. I didn't talk. Part 4. The whisper in the hall. It was a Thursday. Gray skies, soft rain tapping the windows. The Carringtons had gone to a charity dinner, and I stayed late to finish the laundry. Eddie texted me that he'd pick me up. That was unusual, but I didn't think much of it. When he arrived, I saw something new in his eyes, excitement mixed with a strange kind of guilt. He kissed my cheek and told me to hurry, but I said I had one last load to fold. That's when I heard it. Voices, Eddie's voice, and another man's. I froze behind the grand staircase, heart hammering. You sure she's in? The other man whispered. Eddie nodded. Yeah, she's upstairs. Doesn't say a word, that one. Perfect cover. My blood ran cold. Then I saw the man, tall, suited, eyes sharp like a knife. The files will be on Carrington's private server, he said. She gets you in, you upload the code. Once it's in, I can drain his accounts clean. He won't even know till it's gone. Half for me, half for you? Eddie asked. Half, the man confirmed. Easy money, no one gets hurt. I bit my fist to keep from gasping. They weren't just stealing from the Carringtons. They were using me to do it, my husband, the man I'd built my life with. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the weapon in their plan. Part 5, the longest night. That night I couldn't eat, couldn't breathe. Eddie sat on our couch talking about how things are finally turning around. All I could hear was that voice in the hallway. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, fear shut it again. What if I told the truth and ruined him? What if I stayed silent and let a good man lose everything? Don't talk, Ruth, Mama's voice whispered in my head. People like us can't afford trouble. But this wasn't just trouble. This was wrong. So I prayed, I cried, and when the sun rose, I knew what I had to do. Part 6. Breaking the rule. Mr. Carrington was in his office when I arrived. He was on a call, his voice calm but tense. When he hung up, he smiled politely. Morning, Ruth. My mouth went dry. Sir, I need to tell you something bad. He frowned slightly, concern flickering in his eyes. Go ahead. I told him everything. Every word. Every detail. My voice trembled so badly I could barely breathe. When I finished, he stood very still. The silence stretched heavy and thick, then he said, Ruth, I believe you. 3 words. Just 3. But they broke me. Within an hour, the house was filled with people. Security, police, and a man named Harris from the FBI. They moved like shadows, checking systems, tracing files. By evening, they had proof. The spyware, the emails, the transaction trail. Eddie had already transferred test funds. When they came for him, he didn't resist. He just stared at me, that same stare from the night before, but colder. You were supposed to keep quiet, he said as they handcuffed him. You ruin everything you touch. Maybe he was right, but I'd rather ruin a lie than live inside it. Part 7. The aftermath. The days after the arrest were a blur. Reporters swarmed the mansion gates. The Carringtons didn't comment. They protected my name, kept me out of it. But inside, I was breaking. I lost my husband, my home, my sense of who I was. Every morning I'd wake up and wonder if I'd done the right thing. Then one afternoon, Mrs. Carrington came to the kitchen. I'd never seen her without makeup before. Her eyes red, her face soft with emotion. Ruth, she said gently, I heard what happened. I want you to know. You saved my husband. You saved our family. Her voice broke. You didn't just protect our fortune. You protected our faith in people. She took my hands. For a long moment, she didn't say anything else. Just held them, warm, firm, grateful. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the maid. I felt like someone who mattered. Part beat. The gift weeks later, Mr. Carrington called me to his office. I thought he might be letting me go. Maybe the scandal was too much. Instead, he slid an envelope across the desk. "Ruth," he said quietly, "this can't repay what you lost. But it's a start." I opened it. Inside was a check that made my hands tremble. Enough to start over, enough to breathe. But that wasn't what made me cry. It was the note attached. "You reminded me that decency still exists, that there are people who choose right over easy. You didn't just save my company, Ruth, you saved me." He smiled softly. "And if you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me." All I could manage was a whisper. "Thank you, sir." Part 9. Finding my voice. It took me months to start over. I moved into a small apartment, started a cleaning business with 2 other women I'd worked with before. We called it Helping Hands. We didn't have much, a few vacuums, some old buckets, and a lot of hope. But somehow word spread. Clients loved us, not because we were perfect, but because we cared. One day a man called asking for a cleaning quote. His voice sounded familiar. When I arrived at the address, it was the Carrington estate. Mr. Carrington opened the door himself. His smile was warm. "Ruth," he said, "I was hoping it'd be you." He didn't need the house cleaned. He'd hired us to help us, to make sure we stayed afloat. "You're building something good," he said. "Keep going." And I did. Part X. Full circle. 2 years later, my business has grown. We hire single mothers, immigrants, women who've been told they're too small to matter. Sometimes they ask me how I started. I tell them the truth. I spoke when it scared me most, and it changed everything. I still hear Mama's voice sometimes. "Don't talk, Ruth," but now I whisper back. Some things need to be said. Epilogue. The power of one voice. Last Christmas, I received a letter from the Carringtons. Inside was a photo, the whole family smiling with a small caption. "Because of you, we're still together." I framed it on my desk. Every time I see it, I remember that rainy night, the whispers, the fear, the moment I chose to break my silence. And I smile, because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest courage. They always told me to stay quiet, to never speak above a whisper, to stay in the corners behind the shine of other people's lives. But silence can be heavy. It can drown you. I learned that the night I heard my husband's voice plotting something that would destroy the only good man who'd ever believed in me. I grew up poor. My mother used to say, "Ruth, the walls have ears and people like us can't afford to be heard." So I learned to clean without sound, to move like air, to see everything but say nothing. When I got a job with the Carrington family, one of the richest in the city, I promised myself the same rule. Don't talk, just work. The Carrington mansion was a palace of glass and marble. Mrs. Madeline Carrington was graceful and proud, a woman made of elegance. Mr. Ethan Carrington, her husband, was quieter, kind, but distant. He carried something sad in his eyes. He wasn't cruel like many of the wealthy people I'd worked for. He remembered my name. He said, "Thank you." Once, when my hands were blistered from scrubbing, he left a bottle of lotion on the counter with a note that said, "Please take care of yourself, too." I never forgot that. My husband, Eddie, used to be a good man. We met when we had nothing. We dreamed about a small home, a life built on love. But dreams don't feed you, and when he lost his construction job, he began to change. He drank more, spoke less. His laughter turned bitter. When I got the job at the Carringtons, I thought it would fix things. But instead, Eddie grew resentful. "You're working for people who wouldn't even look at you if you weren't cleaning their dirt," he'd say. "They've been kind to me," I'd whisper. He'd laugh, sharp and cruel. "They're kind because you're useful. Don't forget that." I never answered, because that's what I did best. I didn't talk. It was a rainy Thursday night when everything changed. The Carringtons were out at a charity event. I stayed late to finish the laundry. Eddie texted that he'd pick me up. That was strange. He never did that. When he arrived, he looked restless, nervous, smiling too much. "Come on, Ruth, let's go," he said. "I just need 10 more minutes," I told him. He sighed, annoyed, and wandered down the hall. A few minutes later, I heard voices, low, urgent whispers. Eddie's voice and another man's. "You sure she's in?" the other man asked. "Yeah," Eddie replied. "She's upstairs. Doesn't say a word, that one. Perfect cover." My heart stopped. "The files are on Carrington's server," the man said. "Once she logs in, we upload the code. We'll drain everything before sunrise." Eddie nodded. "Half for me, half for you. They were planning to rob Mr. Carrington, and they were using me to do it, my husband, the man I trusted." I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from crying out. My knees trembled so badly I thought I might fall. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of our bed watching Eddie breathe beside me. Every voice in my head told me to stay quiet. "Don't talk, Ruth. People like us can't afford trouble." But another voice, smaller, braver, whispered back, "If you stay silent, someone innocent will suffer." When the sun rose, I made my choice. I arrived early the next morning. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. Mr. Carrington was in his office reading reports. "Morning, Ruth," he said softly without looking up. "Sir," my voice cracked, "I need to tell you something bad." He looked up, concerned. "Go ahead." And I told him everything, every word, every whisper I'd overheard. My hands shook. My throat burned. When I finished, he didn't speak for a long time. Then he said quietly but firmly, "You did the right thing." Within hours, his team found the spyware. They called the police. They caught the man in the suit that afternoon. Eddie was arrested that same night. When they led him away in handcuffs, he glared at me. "You were supposed to keep quiet," he said. "You ruin everything." Maybe I did. But I ruined a crime, not a life. The weeks that followed were a blur. The Carringtons kept my name out of the news, but inside I was falling apart. I'd lost my husband, my home, and the little world I thought I knew. Still, I kept showing up for work. I couldn't bear to disappear. One evening, Mrs. Carrington found me in the kitchen. Her perfect voice was trembling. "Ruth," she said, "you saved my husband, you saved us." Her eyes filled with tears. "You reminded me that good people still exist." She took my hands, warm and firm. For the first time, I didn't feel like the maid. I felt like someone who mattered. A month later, Mr. Carrington called me to his office. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, more money than I'd ever seen, and a letter. "You didn't just save my company. You saved my faith in humanity. Please use this to build something of your own." He smiled. "If you ever need anything, Ruth, you call me. You're part of this family now." I tried to speak, but no words came, only tears. For the first time in my life, my silence meant something good. I used that money to start a small cleaning business. Just me, 2 old friends, and a van with fading paint. We called it Helping Hands. I hired women like me, quiet, hardworking, overlooked. We cleaned offices, homes, schools. We listened. We cared, and little by little the business grew. Sometimes people ask why I started it. I tell them the truth, because someone believed a maid's voice mattered. 2 years later, a client booked us under a fake name. When I arrived, it was Mr. Carrington standing at the door. He smiled. "Ruth, I wanted to see how you were doing." He didn't need the service. He just wanted to help. "You're building something beautiful," he said. "Keep going." And I did. Today, my business has over a dozen employees. Women who've been told all their lives that they're too small to matter. I tell them, "You matter. Your work matters. Your voice matters." And every time I say it, I feel my mother's voice whispering from the past. "Don't talk, Ruth." I smile and whisper back, "Mama, sometimes talking saves lives." Last Christmas, I received a card from the Carringtons, a photo of them, happy, together, smiling. On the back it said, "Because of you, we're still together." I framed it on my desk. Every time I look at it, I remember that rainy night, the fear, the choice, and the courage it took to break my silence. Sometimes courage isn't loud. It doesn't shout or demand attention. Sometimes it's the quiet voice that says, do the right thing, even if it costs you everything. And sometimes the people who seem the smallest end up saving the ones who seem the biggest. Because true strength doesn't wear a suit or carry a title. Sometimes it wears a maid's uniform and a heart brave enough to speak.